are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show.
Welcome to the Evolve to Win show, produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Business Magazine. I'm Heather.
And I'm Paul.
And thanks for joining us for this show, which is really created based on our years of experience working with executives and senior leaders, entrepreneurs, in helping them to grow in every aspect of their business. We are in such a fast-paced business environment, so growth
blazing fast.
Yeah, intentional growth is really important. And we want to talk today about leadership and creating your leadership purpose.
I think this is a really, really important topic for anybody who's a leader or aspiring leader out there, is what is your purpose? I don't think a lot of people are ever asked that, you know?
I can tell you with every executive or entrepreneur I've ever worked with, when I ask them, what is your leadership purpose? I get sort of a blank stare. I get that RCA dog, which some of you will get and some of you will not. But yeah, most people have not defined their leadership purpose, and it is critical. It is essential that you define your leadership purpose, because if you don't, then you're subject to whatever happens in your environment. And as we all know, things aren't always great in the environment. So, unless you want to be a drifter at work, then you really need to define this leadership purpose. So let's talk a little bit about what that even means.
Also, it's not so much about, obviously it's about yourself, and that you could be drifting and you really don't have, anything that you're aspiring to be or to become. But the other thing is if you're a leader already and you have people following you and they don't know what your purpose is, where you're going, where you're heading, there's probably not going to be a lot of trust there, and there's probably not going to be a very good reason why they would want to follow you.
Yeah.
Especially, it's easy to follow people through good times, but in those bad times, those tough times, I think is where the challenge is. When you don't have that purpose, that's when kind of things can implode.
Absolutely. And I think, leadership purpose is sort of like your compass, right? It's your guiding light for who you are, who you're being. So when you think about in business, we've got a combination to get the kind of results that we're after. We've got the things that we need to do, and then we've got who we need to be.
Right.
And I think if a leadership purpose is not so clearly defined, then who you're being can just change from moment to moment. And one of the scariest things in leadership is inconsistency. So I think that employees who are subject to a leader who's hot and cold and on and off,
that's for people. That's for people in general. How many of you out there have had somebody that you've met and you're like, oh, I think I can be friends with this person. And so you meet them, you go out a couple of times, and one time they're really cool, and the next time is they're kind of losing their mind, or they're sarcastic, or there's just some real inconsistencies. And this is just in everyday life, right?
Well,
and then you get people don't like inconsistency in other people.
No one likes
good. Think about the friends that you have. The friends that you have, I would guarantee, assuming that they're long-term friends, that they're very consistent in the relationship that you have.
Mm-hmm. So I have a great example. I had a boss back when I was a practicing attorney who was inconsistent, to say the least. So there were times where he was just so super cool, and he was, he had my back, and he was supportive, and he was encouraging, and he was all of those great aspects of leadership that you hope that you get, right?
Yeah, sure.
And on those days, it was really, really great to work for him. However, more times than not, if things had gone bad in his world in any way, shape, or form, he then all of a sudden turned into the jackass boss. Well, that's a technical term, by the way.
Yeah.
Where he was absolutely so difficult to work for, because you didn't know what was going to happen. Everything from he would lose his mind and just start yelling at me or at others. One time he tried to start a fight with one of my partners, and I was sitting in the middle of those two. And when you have somebody that inconsistent, you just don't even know, you don't know how to act or react. So here's what happens. I would show up for work, and I would literally just be a little cautious, a little hesitant, a little anxious each day, wondering, what kind of boss am I going to get today? Is it going to be the good boss or is it going to be the bad boss? Kind of became a running joke about what kind of boss we get. And I can guarantee
Well,
you...
it's very much, I mean, I guess I would say, and I don't want to get too outside of myself here, but it's kind of like the abusive husband or the abusive wife, right? I mean, it's like you walk in and you don't know what you're going to get, and you just walk around on eggshells hoping that this person is in a good place, right? And then when they're not, you're like, oh boy, this is going to be bad, right?
Yeah. Are you
So-
looking at me like I'm one of those?
No, you used to be,
Oh,
but
come on. No, I did not. So, right? I think the point really is, you know, my old boss, who I gave you as an example, he had not tapped into his leadership purpose in such a way that he could use that to keep himself consistent regardless of the difficult times. And that's what you said earlier. It's really easy to lead in good times, but it's when your character is really tested in tough times, or even, you know, when you look outside, those who are in charge of publicly held companies and they're really focused on short-term gains for the shareholders.
Right.
You know, there's so many different things that can pull you away from that purpose if you're not crystal clear on it. So let's just talk a little bit about how you discover a leadership purpose. Because I truly believe that a leadership purpose isn't something that you just create or design. I think that you actually have to discover it. It's something that is at your core within you. And so, you know, I did an exercise that was really cool a number of years back where we, attempted to tap into our purpose. It wasn't described as a leadership purpose. It was bigger than that. It was just, what's your purpose?
right.
And we were to do that in 2 words. And one of those words was going to be an action word, and the other word was a noun. And it was something that was important for us. And what's really cool is in a very short exercise, I was able to come up with my core purpose, which in 2 words is inspiring breakthroughs. And I came up with that years ago during an exercise we had at one of our conferences. And
it's stuck. It's stuck for a long time.
It's
stuck
still
every-
here.
It still is.
it's
and
still here.
you truly do. That is what drives you. And
It is.
yeah, I mean, I think when you are working with our clients, you know, I can always see that that's kind of in the forefront of what you are wanting people to get through your conversations with them and through your coaching with them. You know, pushing them, helping them to exceed their own expectations, but when they're doing that, they're having those breakthroughs.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I do keep that as a very intentional way of being in every interaction that I'm in throughout the day. That I think about inspiring breakthroughs, and that means for me that I'm really out for other people's growth. So I recognize that growth requires breakthroughs, that also breakdowns are a part of, you know, the first part before the breakthrough. And so if I'm a stand for other people's development personally, professionally, as leaders, that's who I am at my core. And the reason that I came up with inspiring breakthroughs in my 2 words of a leadership purpose is because my coach had asked me to really think about the words that meant something to me, to think back to experiences that I had. And I think as you're discovering your leadership purpose, what you're really looking for is you're looking for those moments that actually touch you in some way where you actually have emotion present. So when you feel the emotion, when you feel the joy, the gratitude, the passion for what you do. And so as I thought about it and I looked back on my most significant moments, the moments that I recall where I was truly emotional, I mean, even sometimes to the point of having tears, was when I would sit with a client, or whether it would be with you or somebody else, a friend or family member, and we'd be talking about something that was an opportunity for growth. And I got to witness somebody get through a difficult place and get to the other side, have that light bulb moment, have that breakthrough where you know life will never be the same. It's those moments that I can turn to and know that I literally feel it so strongly. I feel the emotion of the person who I'm with as they're going through it. And there's nothing more satisfying for me in my life than going through one of those moments. So it's about tapping into that feeling, that emotion.
Got it. And so you may be watching this or listening to it and asking yourself, well, how do I get my own leadership purpose? How do I define that? How do I go through a process of doing that? And luckily, we have an expert coach here, Heather, who's going to take me through that process. So,
I'll coach you
so
through
why don't
this
you coach me
process.
through that process?
Perfect.
We won't, go ahead.
Perfect. Let's just do it.
Just do it.
All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to think back. Let's just go short term,
Yes.
within the last year.
Okay.
And I want you to think about your day-to-day work in your role, and think back to some of those moments that were truly fulfilling for you, where you felt alive, you felt passionate, you felt significance, you felt like you were making a difference. Can you attach to one of those moments and describe it for me?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of where I get some gratification and satisfaction of working with people is around helping them to really see their own greatness, to start to believe that they are really good. So those uncovering, so yours is around breakthroughs, but it's also about uncovering just the aspects of themselves that they've always questioned, and really helping them to build that confidence around that particular area that I know is really a strength area for them, and that if they could just take it from a 7 or an 8 to a 9 or a 10, it would make an incredible difference.
All right, so can you give me a specific example? So without naming names, of course, because we always keep our clients' names confidential, can you tell me about a certain individual who you really helped recognize his or her potential or their greatness?
Yeah, I think I worked with a family. It was a family-run business, and it was a father and mother that had 3 children that were working in the business together. And he came to me because he was like, I just don't know how to deal with this family business. And so we worked together, and what he was really great at was, running the business, putting systems in place, and helping, his family work together. But what he wasn't doing, and where I thought he could be really great and was going to make the biggest difference in his business, was holding people accountable and not allowing, because they were family, to take advantage of situations. Now, this sort of sounds like
any family business.
Yeah,
is what
it kind of sounds like
like
kind of a negative, strength. That's that's a strength. But for him to have that breakthrough, to have that realization that I can't treat this like a family business. I can't treat these employees like their family. I have to treat like a real business. And having just helping him recreate his leadership and how he was handling his business made an incredible difference. Now, what happened was, when he did that, was that a couple of the sons left the business. They didn't like how Dad was showing up anymore. But years later, now this happened 4, 5, 6 years ago, and when I've talked to the sons and I talked to the father, now, or a couple of years ago, they said that was the best thing that ever happened.
Got it.
And they were allowed to be able to the kids were allowed to go do the things that they truly were passionate about. They just weren't taking a free ride anymore. And he stepped up to the plate, and now he has a successful business that, he has other employees that are in it and people that are passionate about working for him.
Awesome.
So does that make sense? Is that kind of it? Yeah,
absolutely. And you helped him to define it. What's really interesting is, in your leadership purpose, there was some aspect of that where you helped him to get more clarity on who he was as a leader, which was tapping into a strength that he had that he wasn't using. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think in some way, shape, or form, leadership purpose will always come through as it relates to what we do and who we are for other people. So as you're looking to discover your leadership purpose, you just really want to go back and think about those moments that just really felt good. When were those moments that you felt accomplished as a leader? Because there's something that you did that made a significant impact on someone else. And can you imagine if you not only tapped into that and discovered what that was, but then you took a minute to define it in writing, to document it, and then to keep that in front of your face every single day? Because what we know is, when times are tough,
We know is what you think about is what you become.
Yeah, yeah. And when times are tough, when situations get difficult, when stress is high, which by the way, more often than not, I'm really recognizing that people are in high stress environments because change is so constant. So when the stress is high, if you don't have that so crystal clear and right in front of your face, it's so easy to forget and to get caught up in the moment and do whatever you're going to do because the circumstance brings you there.
And I think, and talking about leadership purpose and having young leaders start to figure that out early. I was watching a video on YouTube, and it was a professor at Harvard Business School. In his class, the last paper of the year, he would have them sit down and write their leadership purpose. And he said it was the most difficult paper for them to write because they really had to do some soul searching to find out exactly who is it that, are they doing this for money? Are they doing this for power? Are they doing this for some of the other obvious reasons? Or is there something about them that, they really want to make a difference in a different way? And, in that video, they talked a little bit about the CEO of, and this happened back in the early 80s, maybe late 70s, early 80s, the Tylenol situation where Tylenol was poisoned, and it was put back in the box and put back on the shelf, and some people, and I think maybe like 7 or 8 people died. I don't know the exact number there, but it was a very tragic situation.
Yes.
And Tylenol immediately, the CEO immediately made the decision to take every single Tylenol capsule off the shelves. And it cost them, at that time, millions and millions of dollars to do that. But, and the thing about it wasn't, you would say, well, that sounds kind of obvious, but it was how quickly he made that decision to, it was like that second. When it happened, when they found other people died, they immediately started that process of recovering all of the capsules. So,
and that goes down in history as one of the greatest leadership decisions. Just amazing that CEO just without spending time thinking about the impact and the cost, said it's the right thing to do. So that's a great example. I want to bring up one more aspect of this that I think is something to be on the lookout for. So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, do I really need this leadership purpose? That sounds kind of fluffy, not sure that I need it. I want you to just see if any of these symptoms relate to you. If you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions and day in and day out and possibly dealing with some difficult employees, difficult situations at work, and they're bringing you down. I've got a client who I'm working with right now, and I'm really challenging him to dive deeper and determine his leadership purpose, because right now the experience that he's got is that he's really frustrated. He's frustrated with his company. He's frustrated with some of the things that are going on in the culture of the organization. He's frustrated that he's got one employee in particular where he's just not able to make the kind of impact he wants to make. And when I ask him about his leadership purpose, he doesn't have an answer. And I said, well, I can tell that because if he were on purpose, he wouldn't be taking things so personally. He wouldn't be feeling burnt out or as frustrated as he is, because he would look at each situation as a challenge that presents itself for him to be able to get on purpose and make a difference in that situation. So if you're not on purpose, if you don't have that very specific intention of who you're being as a leader, then you just encounter every experience and you can allow that experience to take you wherever it goes. So if it's a negative experience, you're much more likely to go negative with it and then not feel good. And so if you're going to work day in and day out and it doesn't feel good, then man, more than anything, do you need to define that document that leadership purpose, because it will pull you through some of those more stressful and or negative times.
Yeah, good point. I was going to say that and kind of sum it up, but you did such a great job, I won't bother doing it anymore.
Good. One other thing that I'll say about my leadership purpose, inspiring breakthroughs. I lived for years with just those 2 words. And then about 2 years ago, I did an exercise. I listened to a podcast. I wish I knew which one and could share it with you, but honestly, I don't. In this podcast, they were talking about discovering your purpose. And again, it was more of a high level in general, what's your purpose in life? And I chose to do an exercise that they gave me to help me get even more clarity on my leadership purpose. And what they had me do is literally just take a notebook and write down your purpose in different words again and again and again and again, and come up with as many ideas as you have about what that purpose is and who you are. And the exercise was to keep writing until you got something in writing that actually caused emotion. And so I gotta tell you, it was a very frustrating exercise because it was not fast or efficient. It actually took me a long time and a lot of pages to actually get to the place of feeling emotion. But I did finally get there, and I can tell you that I didn't get there with my 2 words, inspiring breakthroughs. And even though that to this day is my easy way of describing it, I can tell you that when I finally got there, it was when I got to the place of really understanding that my bigger purpose, the more specific purpose, was to help people really understand their greatness, their gift,
Hey,
that
that's
they
mine.
are. Hang on.
Did you just steal mine?
No. Helping people understand who they are as the gift, their gift to the world. Because I think every single one of us has a gift. I really believe that we do. And I think that most people will never fully tap into it because of self-doubt. You know, self-doubt is just rampant in our society. And so it's really helping people not just to understand who they are as their gift to the world, but also really live into it. And a lot of that has to do with inspiring breakthroughs. But it's now that I've got that clarity on why am I inspiring breakthroughs? Well, I want them to have those breakthroughs so they can live into who they're meant to be as a gift to this world. And so when I got to that point, that's when I finally reached that level of emotion that whoever that wonderful podcaster was shared with me. So if you struggle with it and you can't come up with your purpose in 2 words, or you can't even come up with it in more, you may just sit down and start writing. Just write and write and write and write until you tap into something that really is meaningful for you. And I promise you, if you take the time and you do that exercise, you will not regret it. You will actually feel really good about that direction and that new compass that you have, and bring it with you every single day you go to work.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap this up, I think that it's just awareness. I don't know how many people that are listening to this show, to this podcast, that says, oh, you know what? Yeah, I've been thinking about my leadership purpose, and I know I know I need to do it. I don't think they even are aware that they need to have one. I never knew, and I think once you identify, or once you become aware of it, and then you identify it and you go through that process of finding the leadership purpose, it can really make a massive difference in who you become, because then you really are, the leadership, you are really on purpose on what you're doing. And so whatever happens, in your day or during the week or the month, and it could be good or bad, but it always keeps you centered. And I think that's kind of
I like it.
Yeah.
It keeps you centered.
Keeps you centered.
Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Evolve to Win, produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Business Magazine. And you can visit us at heatherchristie.com and connect with us on social media if you haven't done so yet. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with others. And if you would, please reach out to us, leave us a comment, and let us know if you've already defined your leadership purpose. What is it? Would love to hear about it. Or if you haven't done it yet and you decide to take it on, share it with us as well.
Yeah, and it's okay to steal somebody else's or do market research. I mean, Heather took mine, so it's no big deal.
Oh, it's funny.
All right.
All right. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.